Welcome to the first episode in a two-part series about John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's magician. In part 1, we will talk about the early life and education of John Dee and how he entered the service of Queen Elizabeth. Though he gained a mysterious reputation in the 400 years since his death, John Dee's origins are not sensational. He was born in London on July 13, 1527, to Roland and Joanna Dee. His father worked as a textile merchant, his clients including King Henry VIII. Of Welsh descent, Roland Dee claimed to be a descendant of the historic Welsh King Rhodri the Great, to distinguish himself to the English aristocracy. Whether true or not, the reigning Prince of Wales at the time made Roland's claim a legal fact. In 1535, the young Dee entered the school at Chelmsford and then St. John's College in Cambridge. He studied and excelled in Greek, Latin, geography, astronomy, and arithmetic. Dee owed his academic success to his extraordinary work ethic. He slept only 4 hours a night and studied 18 hours a day. By 1545, he earned a bachelor's degree from St. John's and then a master's in 1548. Additionally, he became a Fellow of Trinity College upon its founding in 1546 by King Henry VIII, when Dee was only 19 years old. Dee gained a reputation as a magician while at Trinity. Using his extensive and diverse studies, he produced dazzling stage effects for a production of Aristophanes' play, Peace. His masterpiece was a giant mechanical beetle which descended from an upper level down to the stage, seemingly lowering itself from the sky. It so shocked audiences they assumed Dee made a deal with the devil to conjure such a device. While at Trinity, Dee also tried to construct a perpetual motion machine. Unfortunately, he and his partner, Gerolamo Cardano, abandoned the project and never achieved their goal. It is worth noting that in Dee's time, the line between magic and science remained permeable. The 16th century produced household names in science, including Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, and Galileo in astronomy, along with Paracelsus in medicine. Yet an age that saw breakthroughs like the heliocentric model and the beginning of experimentation coexisted with a pervasive belief in the supernatural. The new scientists regarded magic with feelings ranging from reverence to skepticism. To further his studies, Dee traveled to the continent for 3 years, from 1548 to 1551. There he visited the Low Countries and studied under the mathematician-cartographers Pedro Núñez, Abraham Ortelius, and Gerardus Mercator. By the time he returned home, Dee built a vast collection of astronomy tools, map-making devices, and mathematical instruments. He also began studying metaphysics, astrology, and alchemy. Dee turned down a professorship of mathematics at the University of Paris in 1551 in the hopes of gaining a position with the English crown. Following his return to England, Dee attached himself to the royal court. There he offered instruction in mathematical sciences to both courtiers and navigators. He also served as consultant and astrologer to Queen Mary I, better known as Bloody Mary. In 1555, Dee faced charges of high treason for making horoscopes for Queen Mary and Princess Elizabeth. Dee spent 3 months in jail before being cleared, but still had to submit to questioning by the Bishop of London. Following the ascent of Elizabeth I in 1558, Dee became a scientific and medical advisor to the new queen, using astrology to select a favorable date and time for her coronation. Dee and Elizabeth sometimes communicated in secret. They sent letters back and forth written in a secret code. Dee signed his coded letters, of all things, 007. By the mid-1560s, Dee established himself at Mortlake near London. There he built a laboratory and the largest private library in England at that time, said to number 4,000 books and manuscripts. He hoped this library would one day serve as the basis of an English national library. In 1558, he published Propaedumata Aphoristica, in which he presented his views on natural philosophy and astrology. Dee generously made his library accessible to all scholars and assisted numerous scientists who applied for advice. Dee's book collection covered every subject from poetry to mathematics, but the most famous book in his collection was surely the Voynich manuscript. The mysterious codex, written in an unknown language that has puzzled researchers well into the 21st century, may have been written by Dee himself. It has never been deciphered and thus remains an object of fascination to this day. In 1570, Dee received orders to write a report for the English government titled Britannicae Republicae Synopsis. It addressed political, economic, and social issues then faced by England. His work influenced English policymakers for centuries, especially his insistence that England should use its military power to build a global empire, as Spain did only a couple of generations earlier. To bolster his claim that all continents should be the property of England, he cited voyages made by Brutus of Britain, King Arthur, and Madog ab Owain Gwynedd, all mythic or semi-mythic figures. His evidence had little grounding in reality or law, but served as effective propaganda. Dee became personally involved in several English voyages of exploration, instructing captains and pilots in mathematical navigation, preparing maps for their use, and providing them with navigational instruments. In exchange for advising Humphrey Gilbert on his 1583 voyage to North America, Dee accepted as payment Gilbert's right to all lands from the 50th parallel to the North Pole. Had Gilbert not died during his return voyage, John Dee, in theory, would have had a legal claim to nearly all of Canada. Yet he also advised Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh in their expeditions for Spanish gold and new trade routes. This marked the height of Dee's influence and esteem in the eyes of his countrymen. We'll talk about what came afterwards in the next episode. That wraps things up for this installment of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.